morning, colleagues.
It's lunchtime. I get it. Just because we didn't eat, you're saying good morning. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Thank you, Nes, for reminding me it's in the afternoon. My name is Male Salam Walifa. I head the legal department, Salt and Pay Benefits.
Thank you. My name is Nazli Seegers. I am the Chief Experience Officer for SALT Employee Benefits, and we're here to talk to you today about the two-part system paradigm, unveiling collective lessons and strategic pathways from an administrator's perspective. Who is SALT Employee Benefits?
Thank you, Nes. Our tagline at Salt Employee Benefits is going an extra mile. Salt Employee Benefits, for those that do not know, was established in 1956. Can you believe we are as old as the Pension Funds Act?
Just pretty, yeah.
Our primary focus then was on federal business, so we've always been in that space for lower income market. The move to the retirement administration came in 2012, and our focus was on industry funds. Our niche is taking over funds that have complex data and legacy issues. We work together with these funds to get them to a clean slate. In our working with the client, we navigate an array of issues, as Nes will explain later, to bring the fund to a more cleaner slate. Next, yesterday at our dinner, someone said to me, Melissa, I saw the IFRA agenda. I saw the word paradigm. What is that paradigm? And I said to the trustee, I said, no, you must attend, because we went all out to research what a paradigm is. Actually, what I didn't tell that trustee is there was no research done. According to www.vocabulary.com, a paradigm is a standard. It's a perspective or a set of ideas. It can also mean a way of looking at something. So the word paradigm comes a lot in academia, in science, and in the business world. Therefore, a new paradigm in business could mean a new way of reaching customers. The paradigm shift is a major change on how people think and get things done. Now, the two-part system, we've always been accustomed to a way of doing things. Come 1 September, implementation of the two-part system changed the way we've always done.
Thank you, Melissa. That's true. So if you look at the retirement fund industry, even now, I don't think that the shift has completely happened, but it's definitely in progress. The current paradigm shows you that the relationship in the retirement fund industry is largely linear. It's one directional. So you have the fund, who delegates to the administrator, who engages with the employer, who moves to the member, and hopefully, in some instances, we don't tell people that we have policies on them because we're worried that they think we want to kill them. So in some instances, members will tell beneficiaries, but in most instances, that's not the case. So if you look at the fund, the retirement fund is responsible for the management of member benefits, and the administrator is really the executor of those responsibilities. So we as an administrator are responsible for the administration and largely for the communication. We hold the record, and so we are the best party to engage with the role players. Following that is the employer, and arguably prior to the two-part system, the employer was our most important stakeholder. They are our conduit to the members. We communicate to the employer and they communicate to the member. The member communicates to the employer and they communicate to the administrator or the fund. And so we have the member, who is our actual customer, our primary stakeholder, and the party that we must ensure is educated and aware of their benefits. And previously, or currently in this regime, prior to two-part, that communication was one-directional. We push to the members, but we don't really get feedback from them, right? And so In addition, we've got beneficiaries. These are member dependents or beneficiaries, and they are critical stakeholders. If you look at the state of unclaimed in the country at this point in time, if we were communicating to members and their families more effectively, I would know that my dad participated in the, I don't want to pick on a fund, ABC Provident Fund many years ago, and so potentially there's a benefit there. But that's not the case. And so what we're seeing with DuPont is a shift, if I don't shift over the chairs. If a window of opportunity appears, don't pull down the shades. That's a quote by Tom Peters. I think there's been a lot of uncertainty about what the DuPont means. How is it going to change our world? What does this mean? And so if you look at it, you've got the fund in the top left-hand corner, the member in the top right-hand corner, in the bottom right-hand corner is your employer, and on the left-hand side is the regulator. And all of these parties engage with the administrator in one way or another. We take input from these parties and we give feedback back to these parties. And so how, in particular, for these four stakeholders, has it shifted? So let's look at funds. Previously it was compliance, it's oversight and investment return. Those are the mandates of the board. But for DuPont, and you'll allow us to expand a little bit here, we think that as boards of funds, trustees have bigger obligations now. It's no longer just, did you send out the benefit statements? Yes, tick. Did you send out quarterly newsletters? Yes, tick. It's got to be a lot more than that, because we've removed the employer, and with DuPont we've given a direct interaction through the administrator between the fund and the member. We can now engage. We can now ask members, are we adding value in your life? Does this make a difference? Or is it a grudge purchase? We work particularly in the compulsory or industry fund space, and so in many cases this is not an election by a member, it's something that they have to do. So funds really need to ask, what value are we adding? Members, on the other hand, knew that retirement was something on the horizon. They were interested in the benefits, particularly the risk benefits. Two-part savings is the new engagement that they have with the fund. There's an incentive for the member to want to talk to the fund now, and that's what DuPont has provided. But the opportunity there is feedback and input, and that is what we feel will change our interactions and what is shifting the current paradigm. The regulator, obviously responsible for legislation, compliance, lots and lots of reporting. But I think for us as an administrator, there was a lot of engagement from the FSCA, and we must commend them on that. In the run-up to DuPont, there was questions, there was input, there was lots of thought leadership, and particularly in our experience, the regulator was very hands-on with what was the challenges that were being faced by these particular industry funds. And so we've seen a shift even in the regulator. I mean, and I don't look it, but about 10 years ago, you would have a regulator that sort of pushed out circulars and told you this is what you will do and that's what you won't do. But they wasn't trying to understand, to engage, to solution with funds. And I think that that is the shift we're seeing, in particular as far as it relates to regulators. Employers, we're talking about contributions, claims, those are our main interactions with them. But the shift that we think as an administrator, particularly, and I keep referencing industry or compulsory funds, because in the discussion this morning, you would have heard Ms. Cameron from the FSCA talk about auto-enrollment. So as a country, we're looking at auto-enrollment. That is compulsory membership. It is industry funds. And so if that's on the agenda, then not only do we need to look at employers as a conduit of information for contributions information for claims, you've got to see how you empower this valuable stakeholder to ensure that their business continues. Because if their business continues, the members continue to be employed and you continue to have a retirement industry. Malisela, so with all that being said, I think we need to look at where we are today.
Thank you, Nes. I like this quote by Nikos Katsaskis. He says, since we cannot change the reality, let us change the eyes which sees reality. An interesting article from the Business Tech published in April 2024. It said, "We all live in South Africa, but we may not be exposed to the reality of the members we serve as Board of Funds." Now, the article continued to say, the national minimum wage is 27.58 per hour, which equates to 220.64 per day. That amount in a month equals to 4,412.80. Now, a average person has a spouse and 2 kids. This article did not consider us men from Limpopo and KZN because this does not apply to us. With us, Baba Kubega and Nano from KZN will confirm that. And Ndate Masha will confirm in Limpopo how the situation is. Now, this is an average person. The cost of a food basket is approximately 3,694. Now, if in a month we're 4,412 nets, you must consider the cost of transport, electricity, and rent. According to the article, that cost is in the region of 2,600. Now, that leaves that family with an amount of 1,765. That equates to roughly 441.36 per person per month, which is below the poverty line of 670. We play in the space, as Ness said, the space that we play in Ness. An average employer member earns about 5,500. The reality is concerning. Earlier on, one of the colleagues, I think it's Michelle, touched on this slightness. And I was listening to a presentation and I was like, now this situation, it's not only applicable to us. In the USA, she mentioned something very important. People are struggling to cope financially. The high cost of living make our members barely survive. The focus is on surviving right now rather than long-term plan for retirement. Now that member who is earning that 5,500, the only thing that he can use or she can use to survive is withdrawing that savings pot. We did a poll on some of our members. Now, our members are saying, we do not expect to live until retirement. Why must we then save for an eventuality that we won't reach? That's concerning. Now, how do we as an industry assist these members with the situation now? I think the answer lies in we need to align our strategies to ensure that we hold hands, all stakeholders, and move together to assist this member to a socially secure future. Earlier in the morning, as colleagues speak about ESG, and I said, but hang on, ours here is on the social aspect. I think employer sustainability for us is important because it will then, they say, there's a fair pay, include a living wage for those members. Because if I look at this, I'm thinking the two-pot system, the implementation, although at the initial stage we were a bit unsettled about it, for some of us in the funds that we entertain, this will go a long way. Now, as you will know, colleagues, the two-pot system is centered around payment of contributions. William Hart-Taft said, the world is not going to be saved by legislation. Is it?
The regulator would argue it will be.
I'm looking at the regulators now. Section 13A, colleagues, of the Pension Funds Act places an obligation on the employer to pay contributions and submit schedules. Followed by that is the conduct standard that says that information that the employer must submit, what must it contain? The members' tax numbers, the members' address, the members' the contact details. Now, there's a corresponding duty on the Board of Fund in terms of Section 7. The board shall take all reasonable steps to ensure that contributions are paid to the fund. This obligation, colleagues, does not rest with the members. It rests with us as Board of Funds. And I think this ties well with what our colleague, the pension funds adjudicator, has been saying. Tomorrow she'll probably touch on this. I looked at their report and she says, no, I've received about 9,000 complaints. About 80% of that relates to non-compliance, and the high volume, that is Section 13A. Now, as Board of Fund, we need to remind ourselves that this obligation rests with us and not with the individual members. If you look at PF 113S, Principle 11, it's clear. The fund, the sponsor, the employer has a mutual duty of good faith. Now that means we all have to work together to assist this member to achieve what we promised him. Now, it all looks simple, but for someone like Nance, who's in the space that you are in compulsory fund, have you seen this being as simple as me as a lawyer? Because for me, it's simple. You have an obligation, you do this, it's okay. But the situation might be different in the administrator space for someone like you.
Absolutely. And so the quote is, or the proverb is very, very applicable here. 1 pound of learning requires 10 pounds of common sense to apply it. This is particularly applicable in industry funds. And I tell you why it's important. We're focusing on industry funds because it's the space we play in. But if you listen to the presentations earlier this morning, South Africa is talking about auto-enrollment, and the FSA asked us to give comment on those papers. So it could be a reality that this is something that will come to the fore much sooner rather than later. And the psychology is different. So when you talk about industry funds or compulsory funds, the champion here, or what the cause that we're championing, is the cause of the member. A lot of these funds, if you go back and look at the history, are as a result of protest action and lobbying by organized labor to make sure that there's some sort of retirement savings in place for their members. So member interests are really championed by the sector. What that means is you already have a reluctant employer, you have a reluctant member, because not everybody sees the value. They're not all willing participants in this journey to retirement, as we've said earlier. And so what you see in cleaner funds, COSAL also runs an umbrella fund, is that non-sector funds, we liquidate employer participation. If they haven't paid for 90 days or they've ceased to contribute, then we liquidate their participation, and the liquidator comes in, he cleans it up, and our records look nice and clean. But this is not the case for industry funds. Remember that it is compulsory to belong to the fund. Now, the reality, Malisela, is that employers, not all of them, look, you do have some entrepreneurs who are doing the wrong thing when they get paid at the end of the month. But the reality, as an administrator on the ground working in the sector, is that there are structural issues in these sector funds. So let's use an example. If I am a security company, let's say, and I tender for business, the first point I want to make is that those tenders are for a period of 3 to 5 years. So you're not talking about long-term retirement journeys with these members. The employer knows from the onset that this contract is for 3 to 5 years. So that's the first hurdle. Then the employer or the party that's been awarded the contract also further understands that there is a 90-day, if they're lucky, to 180-day payment cycle. So I've just got a tender, right? I'm going to be security services provider to the Department of Health. I know on day one that my monthly cash flow requirements are 2 million rand. I also know on day one that I need at least 3 months of capital before I start operating, before I start providing services, before I've appointed anybody. So I'm almost, between a rock and a hard place. I want the business, but I also understand that when I tender for business in the public sector, and this is where we see a lot of the issues, that invoices don't necessarily get paid on time. And so that places a lot of pressure on these employers. Liquidations in a compulsory fund is not a solution. It doesn't solve the non-compliance. I hear they're non-compliant. I mean, it's a compulsory fund. And so if we say to you today, Mr. Employer, we're liquidating your participation because you haven't been paying, tomorrow we're going to be back and say, it's a compulsory fund, come back, let's re-enroll you. And so you will see, it doesn't work in the sector that we work in. So it cleans the records, but who is protecting the members' interests? And in a recent article, again, the adjudicator is on record saying that non-compliance isn't being addressed, right? It is something that sits there, and in the clean fund environment or in the umbrella fund environment, that participation is liquidated and the employer goes away, but who's looking after the members' interests? And how does this assist us in achieving our goal of building a socially secure future? So the complexities, the key to learning is an awareness of where you lack understanding. That's a quote by Jack Pierce. So for the trustees in the room, can I have a show of hands? If you have a contribution schedule and a matching payment, is that sufficient information to allocate? Those of you that think so, please put your hands up for me. We have a payment and a schedule. Thank you. We have a taker over there. No, I think everybody else is just shy. Okay, they don't want their colleagues to see that they said yes. Okay, so yes, contributions require a payment and a matching schedule. But is that all that's required? And the answer is no. We'll unpack why now. Now, I want you to remember our discussions this morning about inclusion and socially secure future. The key to driving down the unemployment rate, the key to social inclusion is our small to medium enterprises, our SMMEs. How do we empower these small businesses that I was a security guard yesterday or I was a truck driver yesterday, I've worked in work, today I'm a business owner. But nobody's given me the skills that are required to run this business. So how do we empower, how do we enable as funds those employers that are going to grow the tax base for South Africa? How do we make sure that there's business continuity for them? So we spoke about good faith, duty and employer support. Now in the schedule, we need the rates to be aligned with what the rules say. If the employer contributes at 5%, but he should have contributed at 10%, the administrator cannot allocate. We can't allocate a contribution that's not in line with the rules of the fund. There's minimum information. We have employers that give us a contribution schedule and they don't have ID numbers for everybody. Maybe some of them are foreign nationals. So it will be Nazli Seegers, Marisela Molefe, Jacqueline Stradom, and Saratin Simani, and all four of us have the same ID number. Different dates of birth, but we've all got the same ID number. And so it's simply because this is a tick box exercise for him. This is not his core business. He needs to get you the schedule so that he can comply, but he's got other stuff to do. He's got cash flow issues that he needs to deal with. And so how do we make it easier? In addition, as funds and administrators, we don't have sight of the payroll deduction to ensure that it's commensurate. And so how do we overcome these challenges? We've rolled out SALT employee benefits member portals that are white labeled for our clients, meaning that it won't say SALT, it says whichever fund it is that the member's looking at. And here we follow the PF 130 Principle 9, which is communication and access to information. So we can't ask the employer, give me your payroll deductions, please sir, because there's nothing in the law that allows us to do that, right? But what we can do is say to the member, here's real-time access to our system via a member portal on your cell phone. Go and see what has been contributed for you. And so that gives rise as well to a lot of the complaints that you see, because the member can say, okay, but he deducted 500 Rand, but he's only paid 250. And so as boards, we need to see how we solution for these problems. Enabling access to real-time information anytime, anywhere for our members. They shouldn't have to travel. to come and see whether their contributions are paid. They shouldn't have to sit on the phone for 3 hours trying to get through to a contact center. How do you make it easy for them? Data quality, and so Two-Pot has taught us lots of things. Prior to Two-Pot, you would have heard not all members have access to cell phones, and if they have a cell phone, they don't have data. We have seen over 40,000 members. At the time that we wrote the presentation, we were only 2 weeks in. So SALT opened on the 16th of September for Two-Pot claims. In those 2 weeks, we registered over 40,000 claims. And you know what that did? It meant members needed to engage with us. There's an incentive. We got tax numbers. We got verified information. So my one employer says NSEGAs, the other one says NAS-SEGAs, the other one is NASLI-SEGAs. By running home affairs verification in our system, the member's able to confirm, yes, my name is actually NASLI-SEGAs. And so it cleans up the records for us at the same time. But it gives us minimum requirements. And so as funds and as administrators, where employers are not able to give that to you because they don't have sophisticated payroll systems, this is a way to assist the employer in improving their compliance. So we've got to look at this is an ecosystem, and we're all partners and stakeholders in this journey together. So how is it that we as funds and administrators give back to our stakeholders? And then we've got a highly mobile membership, particularly in industry funds. You leave here today, they pop up there tomorrow. Cell phone numbers change almost on a monthly basis. And so the issue that we will need to focus on is making sure that members know when that retirement savings is left behind in this fund, that if they don't transfer it, they must come back here because there's money here. Otherwise, all we're going to do is balloon the unclaimed benefits even further. So proactive management of member engagements is going to be one of the complex problems that we deal with going forward. Okay, Malisela, so I've said a lot. I think like it's your turn to talk.
Thank you, Liz. Now, there's some of the collective lessons we've learned in Two-Pot. And I looked at this and I listened to what the colleagues have shared in the morning. There are commonalities in this. Now, you'll recall in your prior paradigm, when a member wants to access their fund, they'll have to terminate employment and then they restart their retirement journey. Now, what the Two-Pot system has done is the member now does not have to do that. The member who can withdraw from their service withdrawal benefit, which is a good way, and more especially for your kind of clients who you're saying today is there, tomorrow it pops up there. Sometimes it is only for the purpose of access. Now that member now has the opportunity to access that amount. Initially, claims for members, it has been problematic. Now, 95% of SALT's claims were from an online portal. Now, trustees, gone are those days wherein an employer and administrator's office is filled with claim forms. Now, we are able to do this online. And I'm glad Sanlam achieved a 98% strike rate, which means our members are actually tech savvy, contrary to popular belief. One of the things, lessons that we learned is communication. We need to diversify our communication. It's no longer dropping an annual benefit statement as an employer. Now we can do roadshows, we can do podcasts, we can do, I saw you on TV the last time, and members were quizzing all the time because they can associate you with the funds that they are in. So I think those kind of things now, the Two-Pot system has allowed us to come together to make sure that we diversify the communications to those members. Tax issues. Members that claim, we're saying 15% of those members have their 88 sorted. It's not an isolated problem. Our colleagues earlier on said some of the members claimed they came back with zero. But the benefit of that is that members' tax issues are sorted now. So it is actually a good thing. The important issue here is this. The current needs of our members outweighs the future needs. These members need assistance now. rather than assisted when they're 65. It's up to us as trustees, as administrators, as an employer. Principle 8, Principle 11, we owe a duty of good faith to one another to ensure that Mr. Molefe, a member, retire comfortably. Now, what next are some of the strategic pathways that we take out of this? I like a quote there by Robert Schuman. It says, change is inevitable, and the disruption it causes often brings both inconvenience and opportunity. What are those?
Thank you, Malisela. So we've looked at 6 imperatives or 6 pathways that can be utilized by boards. The first one being preservation, and the speaker after us deals with benefit counseling. We know these members are coming. If you listen to the speakers in the morning, there are no emergency savings available for Joe Soap on the street. He doesn't have something to fall back on. There's no emergency fund. And so at some point there will be an emergency and he will come for his savings spot withdrawal if he hasn't already. The key here is for trustees to look at how do we ensure that that preservation continues? How do we make sure that members know that this must be a last ditch, if it must be the last option they have, that is to withdraw from the fund? Sorry, I see the beeper screaming at me, time's up. The second is technology. So we've now proved it a fallacy or proved to the contrary that members don't have access. They have access. We're reporting 98% online submissions without the help of the fund or the administrator. They're using technology. So boards need to see how is your administrator partnering with you to exploit technology to ensure that you're engaging your members, right? Engagement being the next strategy. Before it was a monologue, we achieved a 10% return. We paid 1,000 claims. Now it's a dialogue. A dialogue is possible, trustees. You can do polls on your member portals. You can get your members to give you information, ask pertinent questions. Do they see the value? And so then you can target your communication, ensure that you can educate, etc. So polling, member surveys, member roadshows, focus group invitations can be done via technology. So there is a endless world of possibility now that we've got the two-pot regime giving us direct access. We've spoken about data accuracy. We've spoken about how data can improve in terms of the home affairs. Diversification. It's not just about retirement. There's a journey here. And so like Malisela said, 15% of these members have been able to regularize their tax affairs. That is something that they wouldn't have otherwise have been able to do. And then lastly, but not least, definitely, as Geraldine sending to the side, data analysis. You would have heard one of the earlier speakers talk about how the recruitment pool has changed, and they're now hiring scientists, and they're looking at different aspects of data because data is key. Get your administrators to tell you what the data is saying, what are the trends, so that you can make better decisions. I think that's it. Thank you very much.